Welcome, everyone. My name is Pablo De Ocampo. I'm the director and curator of Moving Image here at the Walker Art Center, and I'm thrilled to welcome you here tonight for a screening of Maria Schneider, 1983, and Manal Issa, 2023, two films by the artist filmmaker Elisabeth Subrin, who has joined us from New York and is here in the audience. I'll begin tonight's screening by acknowledging that the Walker Art Center sits on the traditional, ancestral, and contemporary homelands of the Dakota, where we are, which was once an expansive marshland, is a space that was very important, not just to the Dakota, but to the many other indigenous nations who lived on and around and continue to live on and around and in this territory today. We say these things at the beginning of events. I say these things a lot because I'm up here at the cinema all the time. And I say it, as an uninvited guest on these lands as a way of trying to remind myself of where I am and what are the, ways that might shape the work that I do as a steward of resources and programs and projects here at the Walker Art Center. We are here tonight. Elisabeth is here for 2 nights here at the Walker, and another thing which I'll mention quickly. So 3 events in 2 short days here in Minneapolis. It is Elisabeth's first time here in the Twin Cities since a time that we don't exactly know, but Cheryl knows, so you could ask her. But it's been a minute. Elisabeth is here as part of these programs that we do. If you haven't been to one of these guest artist programs, we frame these kind of under the guise of what we call them cinema residencies, which don't maybe unfold in the way that you typically think of a residency, where an artist goes into a cabin in the woods and thinks about stuff and comes out with a novel or a new artwork or something like that. We frame these in the space of the cinema being the space where the residency happens, which kind of thinks about the idea that artists who make films, the space of the cinema, a space that's kind of both a space where you show work, but it's a social space in which we come together, all of us together in the cinema, instead of being alone at your home watching something on Mubi or the Criterion Channel or Netflix, as it were, can come together and share in the space of cinema. So the structure of this weekend is that we have Elisabeth here for a couple of days. We're going to watch some new films of hers. We're going to have a discussion. Tomorrow, we've invited Elisabeth to introduce a film called In the Country of Juliets by filmmaker Mehdi Sharef from 1992. And tomorrow afternoon, I'm saying all these things totally out of order today. Tomorrow afternoon, we'll be doing a small artist talk with Elisabeth about some of her earlier films with our partners at Dream Song in collaboration with them. Rebecca Heidenberg, thanks very much for organizing that with us. So that's tomorrow afternoon at 2. Background. Sorry, I even made notes tonight because I knew that there was a lot of things I had to say, and I don't ever make notes, but sometimes when I make notes, it trips me up and then I get things out of order. So the subject of this residency, in a way, really comes from Elisabeth's 2 new films, Maria Schneider and Manal Issa. The first of these films that we'll watch tonight, Maria Schneider, 1983, as the title suggests, comes from an interview that Maria Schneider did in 1983 on French television. I see this film as being something that's kind of been in a long trajectory of work of Elisabeth's that focuses on the female subject, the complexities of the female subject, and the complexities of how to represent and understand or portray a person's life on film through biographical means. One of the things that you will see tonight, and that I think is something that Elisabeth quite excels at, is the exacting specificity of understanding history through media. What we're looking at tonight is a recreation of a TV interview, and so Elisabeth's keen eye of understanding history and media archives as material that work can come from, and as a script or as an inspiration from which to explore work, is where tonight's program begins, and where it takes us afterwards. Is a film called Manal Issa 2023, and it's a film made with one of the 3 actresses that is in Maria Schneider 1983, and that film is shot in a long-distance collaboration with the French Lebanese actress Manal Issa. Manal in Beirut, filming while Elisabeth is remotely kind of filming her from New York. And it takes up the subject of questions that were posed to Maria Schneider in this 1983 interview, but instead of asking Manal to kind of reenact or reportray those interview and the lines from the interview that were originally aired, she's asking Manal to kind of embody those questions as her own self, as a contemporary actress living and working today. Tonight's program is very tight and short, so we're looking at about 35 minutes of film. It's very dense, so there's a lot to see. Don't worry, you're going to get your money's worth. And after the screening, we're really excited to be joined by artist Elisabeth Subrin, who I've already introduced to you all, as well as Alia Ayman, who is joining us also from New York, where she is a film curator, maker, and scholar, and co-founder of Zawiya Cinema in Cairo, and remotely, unfortunately, she can't be in person, but Manal Issa, the actress, will be joining us on Zoom on a big screen for a 3-person conversation. We'll give her a warm round of applause because it'll be about 3 a.m. her time when she joins us. So, but she's very excited to be here. She and Elisabeth haven't really had a chance to really talk about this work together in a cinema, so we're really thrilled to be able to host them, even if it's remotely for that. And we'll have a little bit of conversation afterwards. There'll be time for audience Q&As. I think that I've said all the things that are in my notes. Without further ado, let's watch some films, and I'll see you afterwards. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us so late/early, Manal. It's a pleasure to have you, and thank you everyone for making it. Thank you, Elisabeth, for making these works. So, Manal, since it's super late, I want to start with you, if that's okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll do the very basic question. If you can tell us how you met, how this collaboration started. Also to the audience, I'm looking this way because Manal sees us that way. And we're trying not to tilt. So if you can tell us a little bit about how this collaboration started, what were your first thoughts when you first heard about the project and your collaboration with Elisabeth in general.
So you remember, Elizabeth, when we met in Paris? So when I met Elizabeth, I didn't know Maria Schneider because I don't watch a lot of films. And I think the first contact between me and Elizabeth was very, very human. We got along before even speaking about the film. And also it was the first time I felt seen by hearing the stories of Maria Schneider. You know, because most of the time we always hear, even actors tend to say, yeah, it's amazing, it was amazing. But sometimes it's not that amazing. So it felt less lonely to meet Elizabeth and hear about Maria Schneider. This is how it started. And then we started working.
And I have so many questions for you, but I'll try to balance. I think, Elisabeth, I want to ask you what drew you to Maria Schneider in the first place and how you came across the interview that sort of sparked this whole project. What inspired you to use that particular interview as well?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you all for coming. This is actually just because of logistics and timing. This is the first time since Cannes that Manal and I have gotten to talk together about the film in public, so that's really special as well. I made a film about 8 years ago called A Woman Apart, which was a feature narrative, more like, you know, traditional narrative film about an actress, and I never planned to make a film about an actress. It's a long story how I got there, but to try and figure out why I was making a film about an actress, I started a kind of feminist political blog called Who Cares About Actresses, and I dedicated it to Maria Schneider. I knew about her because I'd been commissioned to make a short film based on an unrealized Michelangelo Antonioni script that was supposed to star Maria Schneider and Jack Nicholson. It never got made. They made the film The Passenger instead, which was Maria's favorite film, which Maria talks about in the interview. So she was on my radar. I was fascinated about her story. I could not believe, as I started to do more research, how early she talked about the political implications of being a woman in the film industry. It was so early. She talked about it in the 70s and very ahead of her time. And, obviously decades and decades before the Me Too movement. And so I decided I wanted to do a biopic about her. And I even moved to France to start doing research. It was insane. Nobody who is like, I didn't think about the fact that like an American non-French speaking person was going to try and go make a biopic about a dead French woman who hated the press. There was no archives, there was no state, or nobody wanted to talk to me. But when I went to move there, we ended up during the pandemic. And so the research had to be put on hold. But right before I left Paris, I pitched this idea of the short film based on this interview I had seen in an archives, and kind of similar to some other reenactment films I've made. When I first looked at the interview, I was like, I don't really know if there's anything here. Why am I watching it? Like, what is the there that's there? It's pretty basic. But the more I watched it, the more I realized that the way that she was being treated in the interview was a kind of like subtle journalistic sadism that kind of mirrored the experience that she had on the set. And I pitched it to a producer. We worked on it long distance, and it just became a bigger and bigger project. We then shot additional footage that became an installation that is a separate project. And then out of that, the Manal second project came. Sorry, that was a long answer, but I've spent a lot of time with Maria.
Following up on that, did you always know that you wanted it to be a reenactment? And what do you think repetition does for you in that project? Manal, I'm going to ask you the same question after, about the fact that there are two others and there are 3 different takes. So what was that like for you also as an actress, knowing that it's going to be you and 2 others doing pretty much the same thing? So
I have to go first.
Yes. Please.
I've always been really interested in history and how bodies absorb history. There's like official history, there's dominant history, there's what we might call minor history, there's the public record, there's the record that's erased, et cetera, et cetera. I've always been interested in how bodies absorb history and kind of the subjectivity around the historical record. And I've also always been obsessed with biography, like starting as a little girl, and like from like mainstream stupid biopics to really obscure stories of people. And well, okay, reenactment, I've done a lot of work in reenactment. I don't really have an answer to why it works so well for me. What I find, I feel like you find a text, a visual text or whatever, and it's presented in a way and we read it in that way. But there are ways to look at that existing text from other angles. And if I made a film that I was just like, look at this, look how fucked up this film is, look at this footage, then it becomes kind of an intellectual project, not an emotional one. Whereas in reenactment, even though I'm doing a really anal, precise reenactment, there's ways that I can point to different things through the process of representing the work. in terms of the three, I was really interested in the legacy of Maria, and also the literal repetition is inherent to the world that we're in. Kind of like the posters, you know, at protests where people are just like, I can't fucking believe I'm still here saying these things. Like, I see filtered through these three women kind of metaphors of multiple generations having to repeat the same experience. With the way it worked in the production is Manal was tasked with, in many ways, the hardest job, which was to do literally a frame-by-frame reenactment of the original interview, which you can see, you can find it on the internet. Whereas with Aïssa and Isabel, I invited them, I said to them basically, what are the absolute fewest words you could change to make it true to your own experience? I didn't want them to blather on and on. I wanted them to stay close to the text. But what shocked me was how few words they wanted to change, which also kind of supported the reality of what hasn't changed. And I guess the last thing I'll say is just that we think of history as linear, and I really see it as, not to get kind of quantum about it, but as time moving forward and backwards and layered on top of each other. And so I wanted this sense of time warp. And we do that in the sound design, in the language, in performance styles, translation.
So Manal, hi. Hi.
That was my longest answer, I promise.
We have time. So yeah, so I'm curious what it felt like for you when Elisabeth came to you with the role, telling you that it's going to be you and two others, if that did anything in the way that you prepared, and how did you prepare? And the third leg of that question is, would you have chosen to do the part that you did, or would you have liked to do the less literal one? Is also a part of it.
Okay, so basically, I didn't study acting. I learned acting by doing films. And usually I take the script, I read it, and then I throw it because I like to improvise. If I don't improvise what I say or the lines, I like improvising my feelings, how I feel in the character. This is how I learned it, and this is how I liked it. So when Elisabeth came to me with the idea, we of course saw the video of Maria, and the first thing I was looking is how much she's feeling things and saying something else. So I watched a lot of time, and each time you discover something more. And I found it, I remember I told Elisabeth it was very interesting for me as an actress to reenact. And if I had to choose between the three, I would choose the same, to reenact the same thing, because it's good to, as an actor, it's very important to understand everything around you. If you understand everything around you, you can play any character, and you have to go beyond yourself. And it was a chance to actually, the first step was learning the phrases of Maria. The second phase was the timing and her movements. And at the end, what we were working on is that the words should go out of me like it did for her. So I had to have something inside of me, inside of my soul, inside of my head, feeling what she felt, so the words come out like this. So I worked on it basically 1 year, full year. Remember, I used to go see Elisabeth each time I could and redo it. So it was the role I worked on the most in my in all the films I did. So it was very good, and it was also a point for me because I didn't learn acting. For me, an actor should be able to understand more than just perform. If you don't understand, you can't. So this was a lesson more for me, and how do we say تأكيد,
Confirming
confirming that we need to be very open as actors and not very egocentric.
right. Just a follow-up question. You're saying that out of all the roles you played, this one you prepared for the most, which is
Yes.
fascinating given that it's a short. So I'm just curious if that had to do with the fact that you were embodying someone else, and if you were tasked with performing the role of a performer, and so studying the interview itself was part of why it took you so long, or because it meant something more to you, or a combination of both?
It's like I said, it's understanding more and more what she was going through. Because each time we repeated it, we were talking about what she could have been thinking of. So even if I had it right and the timing right, I wanted to know more about her. And I really liked her story, the story of Maria. It's very true. And also it's a respect, when you play someone, you want to respect the person. So you work more to honor this person. It's normal. It was like until the last second that I don't, it came like this, and I didn't say I want to prepare, but every day it was like a duty for me to just repeat it and perfect it. I used to have an app on my phone where I see her and I film myself at the same time doing it. I think it was also very fun to work on.
Great.
Yeah, I want to add, like, Manal, literally every eye movement, every gesture, literally every movement, Manal is reenacting from the original. It's not like a casual interpretation. Like, all of the timing, when we put it on the timeline, when we were editing it, we put the original on one line and the other, and like watching the real Maria and Manal moving, it was literally exact. It was kind of, for a little background for those who don't know Manal studied engineering and was discovered in Paris, and cast her first role. She was the star of the first film she was ever in. I don't think you've ever been anything but a lead actress in a movie, and a lot of the time that she was rehearsing this film, she was on the set of a huge Netflix film called The Swimmers, about, I don't know if any of you guys have seen it. So it's very meaningful to me, the amount of time that she worked on these 7 minutes of the film.
I don't think I'm supposed to say that, but I like this better than The Swimmers.
Me too.
Okay, so I think I want to move on to the connection between the two works. So I think, Elisabeth, if you can talk to us a bit about how did you decide to do this other piece, if you think of it as a follow-up, or when did the idea emerge to like do a follow-up, or like this other video with Manal specifically. And I honestly don't mean to impose, but it's something that, like, this is my third time seeing both, actually. And seeing the second film with Manal only, I was thinking about, you know how there's so much talk about intersectionality and how different things relate to one another, but seeing the film with Manal as she's talking during a war in Beirut, I am reading it as a corrective to white feminism, to be honest. So I was wondering if this is something you thought of as well. Sorry for the long question.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that was definitely a very explicit and obvious perspective in the first one. And I think in the second one, it was really about trying to shift the lens from an entirely Western perspective. So not just white feminism, but kind of European feminism, white European feminism, and like West and capitalist feminism in general. And so that's that. And, the the film happened in two ways. One is that this installation, we shot additional footage. Sorry, for Maria Schneider 1983, we shot additional footage for what became a multi-channel video installation called The Listening Takes, which was presented at a museum at Brown University in 2023, and then was scheduled to then tour to a gallery in New York. And the curator in New York kind of threw down a gauntlet, or what is it called? Threw down a whatever, and was like, well, what are you going to do differently? And I was very happy with the original installation. And I was just like, I don't know. And like right around that time that she made this provocation to change the installation was October 7th. And then for me, in some ways, talking about actresses became, I was just like, what am I doing? You know, and around the same time, Manal and I, who had stayed in touch, but weren't in touch like weekly, we started talking all the time. And I don't know how to say this except for in a really personal way, and I don't know what, Manal, you'll say, but there was something for me as an American Jewish New Yorker who felt really devastated by what was going on in Gaza, reaching across 5,000 miles to talk to French Lebanese Muslim in Beirut. There was something that I found, I won't be able to explain why, but I think Manal knows the same thing. It wasn't doing anything, but it felt like a connection and a conversation that felt really, really meaningful. And I was also touring, showing Maria Schneider 1983 in festivals and theaters. And I asked Manal, who is also an activist and has spoken a lot way before 2023 about Gaza and Palestine, including on the red carpet. I asked her if she wanted to make a statement that I could read before screenings of Maria Schneider 1983, because I just felt like having this woman starring in this film who is currently devastated and witnessing with all of us what's happening. And Manal said, I'm too upset. I'll give you DMs. I'll give you voice messages. You can do what you want. So I transcribed them and edited them, showed it to Manal. She gave me notes. We worked on it more, and that's what I would read before screenings in 2023. And then somewhere around a few months into this thing, I had it in the back of my mind, like Manal was the only one who didn't get to do her own interpretation of Maria. I have actually, do you remember you said, can we just do one take where I get to be Manal, like Aïssa and Isabel did? And I was like, yeah, totally. And of course that didn't happen because we ran out of time on set. So Manal was the only one who didn't get to speak specifically about her own life. And so I proposed to her that we do it again, but with Manal responding to the questions as Manal. So we really spent 9 months talking on Zoom, voice messages, text, emails. Literally, I have like 50, 60 hours of recordings of us addressing each question and Manal talking to me and asking more questions and more questions. And then in a really exhaustive process, we managed to distill that down to the 7 minutes that you hear.
Manal, how was it like for you to be doing this? Because now we heard the story from the point of view of the director, but as an actress also being given a chance to co-write, which is not so common, but also as somebody who's literally living, you're in Beirut, right? And there's a war, and Israel's bombing everywhere, and you're doing this. So I was wondering if you want to talk about how that was for you, and also how both of you decided on the final, what was going to make it there. Because I imagine there's going to be a lot that didn't, right? So, sorry.
So during just even before, like I say in the film, even before October 7, I was very unhappy with the films I was getting. So when this happened and the world awakened, finally, there was something that I couldn't act anymore. I couldn't read any script anymore. I felt like it was useless. I felt like most actors don't speak up where we should actually speak up. A lot of productions showed their real faces, distributors showed their real faces. So I started to be like, don't say this, don't say that. But Elizabeth knows me, I don't care. So I was seeing everything while at the same time deciding I don't want to act anymore. So Elizabeth knew this. So we were speaking about it all the time. And for me, during this, I lost a lot of friends that I discovered they were cowards for not speaking up. And also, I lost friends because of the war. And you feel I was like basically spending all the time with my daughter together, and I couldn't read scripts. So with Elizabeth, she was like I was speaking to her. She was my friend. We were not working on the film. Maybe she was working on the film in her head at the beginning, but for me, it was just speaking and saying how stupid acting feels like, actually, at the time where people are dying, where the killer is nobody cares, they can kill, they can do whatever they want, and if you speak up a bit, you're punished. I remember one film, I was on a film, the director was American, he was very happy, we were gonna shoot everything, and then the French producer decides, oh no, we don't take Manal because she's saying this. And then I was like, whatever, man, people are dying. I'm not gonna, no, I don't care. He can just stay in his bubble. So that only project I was working on was the one with Elizabeth, because I needed to also be myself, because I knew that most of the people would be scared, even though there's nothing scary about what I'm saying. And it's so funny, and I'm gonna continue answering your question as I'm an engineer and very organized in my head. With Elizabeth, we were, once we had everything, and we had a lot of things. At the beginning, it was like 7 minutes. It was too little. I have a lot to say, but actually, it helps because I speak and I tend to speak a lot. It helped me also organize my ideas. So we worked on shaping everything, and also each day we were forgetting the day before until we arrived to the idea, and also saying without saying, and also being poetic. So we worked on writing together, me and Elizabeth, always repeating the same. What we did with Maria, we did with Manal, Issa. We kept repeating and repeating how it sounds, how it's everything, and also took a lot. And Maria Schneider gave us the structure, but we put the idea. So it was interesting. And the last part of the question was like, this is, what did I miss? I missed something.
Yeah, and you're the engineer, and I have a memory of a goldfish. I remember it as it comes, but but it's
So,
okay.
yeah.
We don't have to remember it. I can ask more.
Yeah, I remember. And I remember that also I was supposed to be in the film.
This was my follow-up question, actually.
Yeah, so I was supposed to be in the film, and then one day I tell Elizabeth, I don't want to do it. I'm happy now. I said what I feel because it was too much. It was here, and it was really hard. And the film we did it before it started in whole Lebanon. It was just in the south at the beginning, but I was feeling it. I was telling Elizabeth, it's gonna come. It's gonna come. The war is gonna come to us. So I felt like I was already happy with speaking, And then I decided I didn't want anymore. But Elizabeth was so nice and understanding. So we said, and we also spoke about it, and I told her, and this is where it came the last at the end. No, if I can't be myself, there is no point in showing myself. And after we finished the film, I managed to act again. I couldn't before, but the film really helped me personally be heard. Sometimes you suffer and you feel like people think I'm just an actress and I'm happy. No, I'm not happy. It's good. People know what I feel. It was first this thing for me. It removed a lot of baggage on my back. And also, after this, because it worked and people liked it and listened to it, I said to myself, I can't just stay home and stop acting. I can do something. And it was also because Elizabeth listened to me. Most of the people silence me. Just tell me, chill, Manal. It's okay. Yeah, it's okay to have my family in danger. It's okay. You just say it's okay. No, it's not okay. We have to speak about it. And just the fact of being heard one time, it unblocked me. Maybe Maria Schneider, nobody heard her, And that's why also it's very good to learn from history, because maybe if Elizabeth didn't hear me, I wouldn't act anymore and I wouldn't care. But now I know the importance of acting and why I want to do films and why it's important to do film. So these 7 minutes changed a whole story in my life and everything, and maybe in cinema. I don't know.
Yeah, and I have to say, I mean, I think it's very, very brave for someone to say the things that Manal said with the film that is, the title is her name, and the film is now showing globally. It's China, Croatia, South America. The film is showing all over the world with a very powerful position. So for me, Manal's courage is really blew my mind, and I had to really think about being responsible to her courage in a way and holding that in a way. And, we did, like Manal said, I was going to go to Lebanon and shoot. And then because of my teaching schedule and the unpredictability of what was going on in Beirut, we moved the film to Paris because we already had that crew there and they all were all in. And then Manal called me and said she didn't want to do it. And I'd be lying if I didn't say that I was devastated that day and wanted to kill her. And then I thought about it for a few weeks and called her back and was just like, well, what if we do it without you in it? And thank God she said she didn't want to be in it, because it made the real film. The film says what she is saying. And I think it's a far, far, far better film for that reason.
And there's a cameo at the end. I don't know if people noticed. Did you notice? Someone is nodding. But the last shot, Manal is walking down the street. So just curious how that came about also.
I'll let Manal answer that.
Yeah, because I told Elizabeth I want people to see that I was on set, but I didn't want to be in front of the camera. So yes, we got the idea of just walking down with me and my daughter to show that this was on purpose. It's not just a voiceover put over a share. No, it was all calculated, and the message is also with this. That's why I like this film, because I can I can do it another day, because it's the first time I do a discussion about the film, but we can also interpret each word of it, give it 1 million meaning, because really it's my whole feelings with life, with being a single mom, with cinema, with the injustice, with the war, were in these 7 minutes. So it was nice. So that's why we did the cameo. She was on set, but she didn't want to show you her face. And also being heard, not just looked at. You know, I didn't want people to just enjoy looking at me. I want them to listen to me.
I just want to say, like, when we shot this film, the pager explosions in Lebanon had happened 3 days ago. The first assassination had happened the day before. When I was sitting safely at like 4 a.m. in Brooklyn, they were on a set. They were on location in a place that we had no idea from minute to minute what was going to happen to that location, to friends, to family, to anyone. It was, I wanted to call off the shoot, but the whole crew said no, that they wanted to do it. And so even though it's pretty much the shortest film either of us have ever made, it was definitely the most intense experience making a movie in my life, because I knew that as like privileged American with all the complications, that I couldn't be like a social worker on the set. That's insulting. That's patronizing. I had to be a director, and I feel like the kind of strength and courage and will that the whole crew had, and also the like exceptional talent of also an incredibly overqualified crew for a 10-minute short it was an extraordinary experience.
I think I need to open it up for the audience, but I have one last question, which I might be wrong, Manel, but correct me if I am. There's one thing you said in the film that I think most of us working between the Arab film industry and elsewhere can really relate to, which has to do with the stereotyping, the fact that, like when you said that most Arab characters in films are fleeing their countries or dealing with wars, and you're talking about these stereotypical depictions that are at once racist and orientalist and all the other ists. So I was thinking this time that I wanted to ask you if Maria was your first time playing a non-Arab role, and how there's like for me, I saw it this time as a bit of like, it's a subversive reversal somehow to cast a Lebanese actress to play Maria Schneider as opposed to constantly being confined to these roles. So thank you, Elisabeth, for that. But I'm curious, Manel, if this was your first role being cast to play a star like Maria Schneider as opposed to a Syrian refugee.
No, thank God I did a lot of nationalities in my career. That's because I chose wisely the roles I
Bravo.
do. I did an Italian girl one time, I did a French one time, and also, I choose the roles depending on the films. I don't really, once I can't portray, I don't do it, but I don't even, I don't think, how can I explain? It's more what it's gonna give me. In the beginning, I didn't notice, because I was also living in France and I came back. For me, it was okay. I didn't know all the films. I knew the films I was doing, but then everyone is leaving because I decided to come back. What's wrong? And every time she's leaving. That's why also I can't. I also stopped acting because I'm tired of leaving. Can you just keep me in my country for one role and just one? I don't want to travel. So this is also, you remember, Elizabeth, it came as a realization while we were talking. Before doing the film, I didn't even notice this much, but over talking it's like we did research, and there's a problem. There's no film in the country, from the country. It's like only the voices that we hear are the voices that travel or want to travel. So this is a shame for the Arab cinema industry to
For
keep
sure.
focusing on this subject, because people in their countries exist too, and they need to speak their stories.
I think I need to open up. I think we have a few minutes. Do you have any questions from the audience? If you could just speak into the mic, please, so that Manal can hear you. Here's the mic.
I love the movies, and listening to you, I think one of the reasons why it's so effective is that the original interview, she's very reticent. It's mostly her gestures or her silences. So seeing 3 different versions of that reticence was very eloquent in a way. So thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. And I read one journalist, like in my research, one journalist like joked about Maria Schneider that she would use anything as an excuse not to speak. And Manal and I always wanted to do like kind of a Manal commentary of what we think Maria was thinking about at the time, and things like, oh my God, cigarette, I love you, thank you, like anything. And it was funny because we had permission from the original director to reenact it, but we had to license from the archives and pay for the dialogue. And lucky for us, out of 7 minutes, Maria speaks less than 2.5 minutes in the interview. So you're very right. She doesn't speak much.
One little detail, substituting the organ music with the bombing, that was just so nice.
Yeah, and it worked conceptually. It also literally happened all the time while Manal and I were Zooming. She would be like, wait, hold on, I need to hear if that's what that is. I keep looking at you as if you're there. She's there.
Any more questions?
Right over there.
Thank you so much. This was super brilliant, and it's just been such a fascinating conversation. I couldn't stop thinking about, do you know, Elisabeth, the film by Delphine Seyrig and her feminist collective, the Defiant Muses, Sois belle et tais-toi, Be Pretty and Shut Up? Yeah, I was thinking about that constantly. We just screened it in the Twin Cities last year. And yeah, I was wondering, because I don't know the kind of history of filmed interviews with Maria Schneider, especially talking about tango. But yeah, I'm just kind of curious to hear more about your sort of archival research for this project and how that came into play during the production. But yeah, thank you. This has been really fantastic.
Oh, my pleasure. Yeah, I mean, Sois belle et tais-toi, which is Delphine Seyrig, the very famous French actress, interviewed a bunch of women between around 1979 and 1980, about 18, I think, French and American actresses, including like Jane Fonda and other very well-known actresses, asking them about their experience being actresses. And Sois belle et tais-toi means be pretty and shut up. And it was really interesting because for most of the actresses in this, experimental feminist grassroots documentary, it was almost like they were waking up to the possibility of like, oh, wow, I've never really thought about this before. Whereas Maria, who was younger than most of them, probably high as a kite during the interview, like, was so articulate. It was just mind-blowing. But yeah, I've pretty much seen everything there is to see that Maria's in, short of hiring a really huge, company to do research for me. But all the archives in France, and I've interviewed Delphine Seyrig's son and worked with the Centre Simone de Beauvoir to do. So yeah, and yeah, that's all been very important to me.
I can keep going.
Say a comment. I just want to thank you for the second film. I mean, I think so many of us are just wondering how do we keep doing things now, and what can we do? And this was a brilliant performance and example. So thank you so much for not performing in that film and just putting your words in it, and for you to making that space. I really appreciate it.
I think it's, I can't speak for Manal, but I really don't know how I would have gone through the last year and a half. The film, its first presentation was in that gallery exhibition, which was, the gallery opening was in New York, was about 10 days after the election last November. And I really thought no one would be there. I thought during the installation, nobody would want to work on the installation because everybody would be too miserable. But instead, like, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people came to the opening, and I think it's just, we need art right now. Like, I have never thought that art was important. Do you know what I mean? I don't think that art changes the world, but I finally understood why art really matters beyond as expression and experience and, art appreciation, that like it brings people together, and it emboldens us and strengthens us and helps us find meaning. And I think I would have thought before everything we're going through now that I would have said art is even more meaningless now. But I realized from making this film that actually it's desperately needed, and it's not selfish to make art right now. It's not, it's actually really important. And it is a form of resistance. And I don't say that in a self-aggrandizing or narcissistic way or as a pass so that I can keep being an artist, but because I can see that it matters. And I don't think I like talking to Manal every week, having these Zooms, taking this 8, just so many hours of recordings and having the kind of conceptual structure of those 7 minutes helped us just distill and distill and distill all her ideas into this like exquisite. I mean, Manal is a genius. I could publish all 50 hours of what we interviewed, what she said, and it was just a huge privilege to listen,
Can I say something?
Please.
I want to say something about art. So basically, what the war did is that, I said I wasn't happy before, but I knew why I wasn't happy. Plus, I spent maybe 1 year with Elisabeth all the time on the phone without wanting to speak with anyone and do any films. But also this broaden, I don't know if you say this, but it makes the possibilities less to work. So now most of the festivals maybe I can't agree with. I have a lot of production companies I can't, because if they want to do this with me, yeah, no, you can't. Me also, I want to do the same. If you don't support Palestine, I don't want to work with you. It's same. But with tightening the possibilities, it makes it bigger. So what happened with me, for example, is that I couldn't work anymore like I used to work, but I started working more with students and working more with people from South Lebanon. What happened with them? I started doing workshops. So now the voices that we used to hear, if it's not our voice, we have to make new voices. That's what also I learned from this war, is that some people, it works with them, but also people awakened. I think people now don't need anymore these kinds of stories. They need more because they know the truth now. They know that Palestinians are the rightful. They know that a lot of things. So we need to do a new kind of art. So for me now, and I've been speaking like this here because it's very, very hard now in Lebanon to do films, but we're speaking of making new ways to do films, new stories, independently from funds. Now, all the people don't speak funds anymore. We start to work free together. So it opens up a hope, at least for you to feel good. And that's what I learned from art. I didn't want to act like now I want to do something new. So it's good. So hopefully we're gonna watch more true things in the future, because everything evolves. You know, war happens, but something else reconstruct. New stories are heard. People ask for more truth. So I think it was also a good way for me to put my feet into this with doing this film.
Thank you both so much, and thank you all for joining us.
I love you, Manal.
I love you, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Manal, especially because it's now like 4:30 in the morning in Beirut. I appreciate you staying up. A quick reminder plug: Elisabeth and I will be at Dream Song Gallery tomorrow in Northeast at 2 p.m. to talk about some of her early work. And I kind of undersold tomorrow night. This is your opportunity
we gotta sell
to see
this.
Maria Schneider in a film that probably has not been seen in this country for a couple of decades. We have maybe the only 35 millimeter print in existence, which we had translated for the screening because no English subtitled version of this film seems to exist anymore. So come out for that. It's going to be wild.
Yeah, this is a wild film about three women who are furloughed for one day from prison. It's made in 1992. It went to Cannes. It has a really like kind of wild early 90s. I don't know. I think of films like Thelma and Louise, My Own Private Idaho, like just things that today there are moments that feel very dated, but the story by this Algerian French director is one of the most feminist films I've seen. And I've interviewed the director and he and one of the other actresses, and I know that this is a role that Maria loved, that she had a lot of input in, and you will never, ever, ever have a chance to see this film again. Like, it was a huge workout too. So if you have time for one more night at the Walker,
Come out.
You
Come
lucky.
Only
all of you.
chance. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Manal.
Thank you. I can't see the faces of everyone there, but I can feel their presence. So
It's a very sweet
thanks a lot
audience.
for coming and seeing the films.